Hey everybody, the background looks a little bit different on this nice little upgrade to the North Star Pro Realty podcast room. Nice little background behind, you see Tommy and Eric in the background, and nice little black walls around us as well. Brings us in today is on this hot, very, very hot July day. I think it's 98 degrees outside.
And humid.
Super humid. So it is really just kind of maybe breaking apart a conversation about what we're seeing in the market, but more importantly is kind of like, what are some of those questions that people forget to ask, or one of those that we just really enjoy answering because it seems to open up some doors of opportunity to our clients, whether it's a buyer or a seller or an investor. So I think, Eric, you said you had a couple right off the bat. Why don't we start with you? What's that one that you really enjoy answering, or the one that people kind of forget to ask?
This fits more in the what people forget to ask category, and it's not even necessarily what people forget to ask, because sometimes they don't even know it exists. And the question that I've dealt with a few times are, what are mortgage origination fees? What are some of those mortgage costs that come up when you're purchasing a home? And it's come up a few times here in the past couple of years for me, where I meet with a buyer, we go find a house, they like it, we're putting together an offer. And I say, well, we're talking about your down payment. Have you taken time to consider how much your mortgage fees, or have you had that discussion with your lender and what that might look like? And they go, oh, what do you mean? I say, well, this number could be several $1,000s. Like, we need to have a discussion about this.
And we wrap that up in kind of the term closing costs.
Yep.
That's a very, very common term in our industry, is closing costs. Now, they're not exactly costs. You are purchasing a product. So if you're going to hear that instead of, mortgage origination fees or anything like that, as closing costs, give a quick breakdown of what those are, what those could be.
Yeah, so that might be something. This is money that goes into your escrow account. That pays for insurance. So this isn't even money that's necessarily a fee. It is still your money. It's just going into an account. There could be fees like prorated property taxes if you're paying a seller back for property taxes that they may have already paid. Essentially, it's a first month mortgage payment. When you go to make your payment, sometimes you miss a month in there. So all of these costs are things that just accumulate and could very easily add up to, and I'm just going to throw out a nice round number, could easily add up to $10,000, just an expense that you have as a buyer to say, this is the cost to close. This is how much money you need to bring in addition to your down payment. So that's something that's come up several times. So I've started trying to bring that up ahead of time now, to say, let's have this discussion, talk to your lender, see how much it's going to cost, because it is something that I've run into a few times where it's changed the terms of an offer.
I just sat down.
Wiggle your microphone.
Hello. There we go. I just sat down with first-time home buyer, and I like that one because the first thing that he said when he sat down was, I don't know anything. Like, what do I do? And it was interesting going through all the numbers with him, where he's just like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I was like, this is what you're going to need, this is what you're going to need. And just kind of breaking that down was, it's a good reminder for us to be like, hey, we got to make sure that we're touching on all this. But
Yeah, and ultimately, a lot of that stuff does come from the lender based on what they have as part of their closing costs. But the ones you'll never get away from is the insurance, the taxes, that type of stuff, where it just is part of every transaction. But then there's the origination fees, the discount points if you're looking to buy down the rate, a lot of variables in that side of things too. And it's property specific, right? Because you might have two very different property tax dollar amounts. It depends on what time of year you close, relative to property tax payments and stuff too. So we use the term "it depends" a lot, and it certainly depends on those situations. But we can have a broad conversation to kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction and go from there. So
Yeah, that one definitely does.
yeah.
One that I like to jump out is, I always ask the sellers, what's the most important thing to you in this transaction? And I can't take credit for it. It was Terry McDonough from Edina Realty. I think he's quasi-retired now, but we had a training on it at our previous brokerage, and he said, what's the most important thing to you in this transaction? And what he meant by that is, to a seller, money's not always the most important thing. Sometimes it is. Mm-hmm. Timing isn't always the most important thing. Sometimes money is. And sometimes it's just stress. They want to eliminate as much, the most amount of stress as possible. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of feel that of just like being able to make a connection to cater just the way we can cater to each individual client, and saying, if we want to get this done fast, all right, well, we can make a pricing strategy against that. If you want it at the top dollar, maybe we have a different pricing strategy. And there's certainly some options out there to be able to purchase before you sell, and go from there, or sell before you purchase too. All of them, we can go across the pros and the cons, but that is one question that I really like to ask is, what is the most important thing to you during this transaction?
How often do you get it where it's not money as the number one?
A lot of times it's money. You kind of look at it. I always kind of go through like a Venn diagram of cheap, fast, and good. If you had to pick two of them, what are the ones that are most important? Is it cheap and fast? Well, it might not be good. A good offer, or if it's cheap and good, it might not be fast. So a lot of times it's money.
Yep.
And then we kind of peel apart that strategy. But sometimes money's not, there's certain, we've had clients where like, yeah, it's fine. A couple $1,000 here or there is not going to make or break us. We just want to be able to make this with the least amount of stress possible.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then we put a plan together at that point.
And I can say too, money is 99% of the time not a factual percentage number, but most of the time it's the thing that comes out of your mouth first. But it isn't actually the biggest motivation in a lot of those cases. I mean, my motivation is to downsize, to simplify, to have less stress, to have less work related to the house. But money is always the thing that comes out when you say, "What's your motivation?"
Yeah.
So it's something you got to be real relative to and respect in the conversation of, yes, of course you want the most amount of money or spend the least amount buying versus selling or whatever. But there's usually a why behind it as to why are you moving? I'm moving because I took a job in a different spot or whatever that thing is. And as you're talking through that and figuring out the motivation, as you're mentioning, I always like to kind of relate back to that as you start trailing down different avenues. You get 30 or 60 days into the conversation and it's like, okay, well, you had said your motivation was this thing. And now we're getting off in the weeds here, going this other direction, which can be fine. It could have evolved what your motivation is, but to make sure that we're respecting our clients and their best wishes, to make sure that we go, hey, is this actually what you want? Because before you said this.
Yeah.
And that is a really good thing to tie back to because it does kind of keep us in our lanes sometime, both as the client and as the agent of like, hey, no, this has evolved. Now I want to do this. So kind of a long follow-up answer to that, but.
And it's easy when you ask.
Yeah.
Yep. How about you guys? Anything that comes up frequently?
My favorite, so I really like working with first-time home buyers. I don't know why. I think it's just like, I like educating. I like walking around. I like the excitement around it a lot of times. But when we actually go into a house and just kind of see how they work, and I think my favorite one is when they ask me like, hey, what should I be looking for, and I'm like, well, look for what is important to you, whether it's layout, whether it's the type of home, whether it's the quality of the finishes, all those sort of things. And I'm like, let me worry about the stuff behind the curtains, like the going down
like the windows.
Like the windows. Oh boy. Oh, we got to get
Sorry
more
about
of those.
that.
Those are great.
Yeah.
No, that was great. No, but yeah, I mean, like going down to the basement and seeing if there's any evidence of water intrusion. Like that's not exciting for a first-time home buyer. Let me handle those things. The age
It
of
is
the
if
roof
they
and
want
all
a
that
pool
stuff.
in their basement. So.
Yeah, fair enough. But you worry about whether is this the right house for you, and I'll worry about kind of the more boring things. But it's kind of fun to walk through. Like, hey, you see that over there, that sump pump with a battery backup, and in this basement that looks like it's had water in the past. Like, there might be a story behind it, and just kind of walking through all those different things. So I don't know. I like that answer.
Yeah, I agree. I like the surface level. Let's figure out if you like the house first. Get the kind of high level interest, And then now you'll see us start peeking underneath the sinks and stuff like
Right.
that, you know. But
Figure
yeah,
out what you like about the house and what you don't like about the house and learn from it. So then we go on to this next house and you're like, hey, remember that thing that we saw in the last house? Well, this house doesn't have that and this one does have this, and you know.
Yep.
I'm going to expand on that just a little bit because I like in that person that hasn't either bought a home in a bunch of years or that first time home buyer, they haven't really learned how to go through a home. One of the first things I say is, hey, I am not going to be offended if you only spend 2 seconds here. Like if you walk in and you know it's not the one, we don't need to waste any more of your time, any more of the seller's time. If we know we're walking right out, don't feel obligated to have to check in through every single corner. It doesn't need to take that long. If it is a hard no, we can lock the door and get going on to the next one that might fit your needs. And they usually, it's expanded on avoiding that Minnesota nice. Well, you know, we made the appointment, so we feel like we
Right.
should spend an hour and 15 minutes here, even though you know it's a no. No, I think sellers would just rather get back into their house and go from there. And, you know, we give feedback of, you know, why it might not have been a fit. I might ask that. What about that didn't fit what you're looking for? And sometimes it is the entryway on a split level entry. You know, we hear that a lot. It's like, you know, what do you want? Well, I don't want a split entry home and I want a 3-car garage. That's what my criteria was for my first house. By that sentence alone, can you guess on what my first house was?
It was a split level,
With?
2-car garage.
Yes, it was. And I absolutely loved that house.
Yeah.
But the split entry, it was like it's a split foyer. You know, there was enough room for a very generous Minnesota goodbye. You know, you could fit 8-9 people in the landing area. And the 2-car garage was, you know, 2+. I mean, it was an extra 4 feet wide than your standard, you know, I think it was 20 feet wide. So then your standard 16-foot door. That's a generous sized 2-stall garage. You know, it's probably 1 car plus a bunch of your junk. And most 3 stalls are 2 cars plus your junk. So.
Yeah, I like to know those immediate thoughts and ideas. I'll say in a lot of cases, and not to offend anybody, but this is where you always offend somebody right after you say that.
Yeah.
But not too many people go into house search and go, you know what I really want is a split level house. That's what I want. That's my favorite style.
Yeah.
But a lot of times your budget, your wallet is what steers you to a split level house, and it can be just a chapter of life. It doesn't have to be your forever home. But that split level house got you into the position to be able to buy your next house that was more fitting and stuff. So I'm working with a client right now that split level house is just going to fill a void to get to the house that they want as well. They'll have it for a couple of years and they're great. They are very affordable in most cases. They're appealing to a lot of budgets, and so they come and go a lot more often. So it's a lot nicer than coming for a couple of years to go, I'm staying here, and then buying a 10-acre lot or something like that, and something that's a little bit more hard to, I shouldn't say hard to move, but just takes a little bit longer. So,
Yeah.
Tyler, did you have?
yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on them for the most part, but one of my favorite things, and Tyler had mentioned it as well, but finding out the motivations and like dialing into how do you cater your conversation to that. You know, the motivation of downsizing or upsizing or wherever that's happening. And then I like to get that question asked or commented on early on in the interactions, because then you can kind of funnel everything that you're doing through that avenue of, okay, we're talking about this because you're wanting to do that, and like reminding of the why all the way along. So that the motivation for me is a big one of what I like. And then timelines of sometimes people are, not forthcoming in timelines initially when they're talking. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're ready to list it. Like, okay, is it sold now? Before it signs even in the driveway. And, but if you know that ahead of time, like when are you looking to move? When are you looking to close? More importantly, when are you actually looking to be at that next spot? Because we might delay some of our conversations, but we might have to speed up, expedite exponentially some of the other parts of it. If you're looking to be in your next school district, and it's May, seems like so far away because you're still in this old school district, and once school's done, we'll start looking. Well, that's a pretty tight window, so it might be last school district, and we are actively and aggressively looking so that we can be settled into the next one by then. So I'm just asking those deeper questions that aren't initially forthcoming like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, figuring out timelines
That's
can
huge.
be a little bit tricky.
Yep.
So definitely.
Yep.
But
Well, I think that's really good as a nice educational piece. I think this is nice, kind of short and sweet, and I think the sweet spot of about 14 minutes with this video. You can always get a hold of us, NorthstarProRealty.com. Any of us in our office will be able to help you. We look forward to having that conversation. And if you are, comment on what question that you want to know and you're dying to know as a buyer or a seller.
Yeah, our next videos, we were always looking for some content ideas.
We're North Star Pro Realty. I'm Tyler.
Tyler.
Tom?
and Eric.